right, Terry Talty, why don't you open up Caroline Bergvall's Say Parsley for us?
Okay. Some of our trouble and even getting ready to talk about this was that we don't really know what this is, because it was a series of installations that the artist did. She's Carolyn Bergvall is also the person that did Via, which the series of translations of Dante's, the first line of the Dante comedy, and that's we can see that as a written poem because it's the translation and then who translated it. But this is a similar poem, but all it is the way certain people say a phrase. And here, we'll just play a little bit of it.
Rolling hills. Rolling hills. Rolling hills. Rolling hills. Rolling hills.
So you can see how there's meter in this, the way the person says the same line, so it's repetition that we see a lot in poetry anyway, but then the break of time in the way it sounds, and it's made with words, so it's definitely poetry, but
it's about the sound, it's about the audio, right? And so whereas for myself, when I first started reading this poem, and I have the actual 2 pages from the PDF that's on the ModPo website, and when I read this, I must have read this 100 times, and I read it really, really fast, and I read it really, really slow, and sometimes I read it backwards. And so I'm going to read just this kind of this repetitive phrasing that is, in this poem. So this is only part of the poem, but it says, say pig, say fig, say fag, say fog, say frog, say frig, say trig, and so on, until you get to the end where it says, say portly, say partly, say parsley. And that is really fun for your mouth to say, and it's fun for your brain to work through, And so for me, that kind of repetitive, redundant sort of, it feels like a march or something to me when I read it out loud. So that's sort of what I sat with in thinking about this. Lisa.
Hi, for me, I really saw this as a political poem because I already knew about the incident where Trujillo, the dictator of Dominican Republic in 1937, when he was trying to get rid of Haitians, which are French speakers, on the border, he had people say parsley in Spanish. If they couldn't roll their R's, they were killed. So for me, this is about how you speak can be used against you, how your pronunciation, your accent, all of that. And so I really liked how she made different people with different accents say rolling hills. To see how that is. And also I really like the first part of this poem, the written poem, where she had maybe one letter followed by a word where we don't really know how to say it. So maybe we all say it very different. For example, say like starting with the third, swallow in it, follow in it, hollow, follow, speaks, lowly, lie, low. To me, that is the different sounds and how she made the poem. Different people may read it differently, and it really resonated with me about how certain accents are highlighted. We like certain accents in this country and other accents we don't, and so for me the politicalization of sound and language was important for me for this poem.
I love that. Terry Rife, what are you thinking?
I read this like Allison did. I read the written text, and I read there's what I consider to be introductory text before what I consider to be the poem, which is on pages 58 and 59 in the syllabus. But it's a little tricky because this poem defies some expectations, like there's no title. So how do we know when the poem starts? And that's just
Oh,
That's something that happens in ModPo with, defying expectations. What is the poem? Is it all of these pages? ModPo didn't spoon feed it to us to say, this is an introduction, this is the poem, this is the reason why there's no title.
yeah, this is the audio is the poem.
Yeah. So then it was just so great because when we got together today to talk about, difficult poetry and how we don't want people to be put off by that, and then said, okay, well, when we talk about, say, Parsley, how are we going to organize that? And we realized that none of us had really considered the poem to be exactly the same thing. Terry Talty, had looked at the art installation part and the recording of people saying Rolling Hills. And I had focused on the text and the way that language works. And I looked at how the R came into the text, and I looked at sight and sound and how it looked on the page, all those quotation marks. You can't hear a quotation mark when that text is read. And there are homonyms in here, like in the first 2 lines of what I consider to be the start of the poem, say this language heals. Well, there's HEELS, which is printed on the page, but there's also, of course, HEALS.
Mhm.
And if it was read to us, we wouldn't know which one it was. And the next line is language keels, KEALS. And I would probably think KEELS.
Or
So,
even kills.
then it breaks up after that, like Lisa was saying, swallow in it. It's very, very interesting. And you will often find that you're not engaged by a poem much the first time you approach it, but then you sort of fall in love with it because of all the things it does.
Yeah.
And so, as per usual, I have fallen in love with this dang thing.
Alana, you're muted.
We had an airplane. The Caroline gives us in this poem the opportunity to say words in our mouths like we would not normally say. We were all kind of contemplating whether we would say some of the words together, but we all sound kind of similar. But by saying things like, as you roll through this, as you read this, and you get to has a bong struck, she is giving us the opportunity to stretch the struck. I can't get that, but to roll our R's, to add in a TH where we may not normally have it, to put keep, watch, rats, the gate, where R, at, and R-A-T as an at and S become a word rats, which kind of like keels and kills, gives a dual meaning. So she's allowing us, if we engage with the poem, to be surprised by what we discover.
Yeah, it's a total discovery poem. And so I'm just going to wrap it up. I think taking this from the beginning, the concept of difficult poetry emerges here with Caroline Bergvall, because we see that we don't even know what the poem really is. We don't know where it begins or where it ends. And that's kind of awesome. And the poem lives in a visual space, in an audio space, and in a text space. I mean, they're all very real. And it doesn't mean that one is more important than the other. And you can take what you like and you can, work through certain aspects and use your own brain to guide your learning through this process. And so that's Caroline Bergvall's Say Parsley, and we hope that you feel invited to approach difficult poetry.